Hey, welcome back to the ImpactEd studio. Thank you for joining us today for episode 19. I'm joined by my good friend and social media influencer, James Brigden. Look how happy he is with himself. And today we are genuinely excited because we're going to continue the process of taking you through your situational analysis. But today we get to introduce something that we think you'll find extremely valuable.
Yep, a big call out this one. People have been asking for this. I think people that I run into, I've been telling them that it's coming, but it's a Numeracy situational analysis tool. So we've spoken about this often. It's all very well having a target. It's all very well saying we're going to do better in numeracy, but this tool will hook you up directly with the evidence base and therefore the strategies that you need to be putting in place in your next 4-year plan.
So no longer will I just have to give you a get better card.
No, that's right. Yeah. Look, a cast of many have got into developing this. We'll get them on here to talk to you in the next step, but we can go. We can take you through the first step of this, the looking inward, right now.
Okay, let's jump in. Okay, we're very familiar with the situational analysis process, looking inward, looking outward, and looking forward. So this tool has been designed to help schools self-evaluate and support the effective teaching of mathematics for numeracy against current evidence-based research and practice.
All right, so the tool looks like this. This is the front page, Steve. It comes as a Word document. There's actually 3 parts to the tool. There's this, the Word document. This is the instructions. This will step you through the process. There's the evidence-based guide, which is actually the crucial bit that links you to the why we do things a particular way. And there's an evidence-based summary this time round so that we've made it even easier for larger numbers of staff to get across the evidence base. Yep. We found from the reading tool that connecting people with the why was really influential in those people changing their practice, or at least understanding the need to change their practice, which is the first step in change management.
And right at the beginning, we'd like to call out the great work of Lee Engelfeld and Kath as a party and thank them for their commitment to supporting our schools.
Yeah, so just a bit about the tools. In both cases, the reading tool and the numeracy tool wouldn't have been possible without those teams. I think it's fair to say, though, that we went and said, can you make us a tool that will deliver these outcomes? And they've delivered on that tenfold. So we're really grateful for the way they've worked together with us.
Okay, let's have a look at the next page. This looks really similar to the reading tool, and today we're going to dive in just looking at the looking inward section, and we will come back to looking outward and looking forward in future episodes. So let's go through looking inward.
Okay, so the first step there will be data. We've called out the data that we want you to look at, and I've also got a little video spot to put on after this, and that's where we'll actually concentrate today. If you want to flick to the next slide, Steve, this is a very structured conversation that must be had, and it probably would take place after you've looked at the data, but while you're looking at the staff surveys.
So I really like that. How would staff articulate a school-wide vision for teaching of mathematics for numeracy?
Well, collective efficacy is probably the only game in town for most change management processes.
And everybody knows that getting a commonality of practice is where we get real impact.
We also call out here the idea of non-negotiables around the numeracy session. And I think that's really important. What is the minimum expected standard of preparation, of delivery, of how you run the classroom, how you organise the resources at your disposal and so on?
A shared understanding of what good looks like.
Yeah, and we might flick forward one more. And when we get to the next page, the 2 survey pieces are here. And a lot of trouble, again from that same team, has been gone to make these surveys happen. So the survey, which the link is just here, as with the reading piece, it will open a Google Form style survey. There's instructions in the appendix on how to manage that data.
They've worked so well for the reading. I was going through one yesterday actually with one of the principals, and that's a really powerful tool. It's simple and it's taking workload off principals.
The reason is because it resonates with the evidence base, Steve. So we've gone to a lot of trouble to make sure that there is clear alignment between our understanding of how we teach numeracy, asking teachers how they're implementing those elements, and asking students their perception of the school's efforts. And that brings me to the student surveys. Now, with the reading tool, I saw some great videos on YouTube of kids answering those questions. Really good. Then there's a pause point. Then there's step 6. Now, just with the reading tool, if you're not getting a clear direction by step 5, then go here. But this is a little bit optional. All right. So let me stop there, and let's jump into some Scout and go right back to that step 1 and talk about the data that we're going to look at. So we're in Scout. Obviously, we're going to NAPLAN. Everyone's Scout looks a little bit different, but this one's pretty straightforward. So the first place we're going is school results, and then we're going to look at scores by domain. Tell us what we're looking at here, Steve.
Okay, so we've got our graph on the right-hand side, which is broken down by quartiles. Bottom quartile down, obviously the lowest section. The middle 2 quartiles in the dark green section.
So pretend I don't know what quartile means, Steve.
Okay, the bottom 25% of results is the lower quartile. The next 50% make up the middle 2 quartiles, and the top 25%. The length of the if you look at the lines going above the green, the greater that length shows the greatest difference between your highest result and your lowest result. So if we look at this, we can see our lowest result somewhere around 320-ish, and we're looking up around 570. So in the same cohort, that's a very significant length. Now, when you've got a school that's consistently performing at similar levels, that contracts and comes in quite tight. And the thing that is the trap for people is you've got to go back and check that scale, because it's not the same when you look at one result to the next. It automatically adjusts to give you the best image on screen.
And the black line across the middle, Steve?
Yep, is our school mean, and the black dot is the school average.
Excellent. All right, so let's move along from there. So that gives you a really broad brush understanding. Now you can also filter by Aboriginal students, all students,
boys, girls, yeah,
grade, or even year 3, year 5, year 7, or year 9 in the secondary. All right, we've moved across here to bands over time. Now I can tell straight away this is a small school because there was no score in that 2019 one of those bands there.
And we've got.
Why is this useful, Steve?
You're looking for trend data, and you want to see, particularly if you can map back to what's going on in a school compared to, in terms of results linked to the initiatives of practice that you're running. If you've been focusing on a particular strategy and practice, you want to see that reflected in your bands over time. Now, you can look at this in multiple ways. Because it's a small cohort, we've got to remember the reliability of data and whether it's statistically valid, but particularly once we get into larger cohort sizes, and the department always says that a cohort over 10 is the minimum needed to be statistically reliable, but we know the greater that number, the more valid the data. So this is giving us 5 years worth of results. And my very quick analysis, you can see that from 2015, there's been a significant push up to 2019 of moving students from the bottom and middle into the upper bands. There's still some work to do in that third highest band, and I'm sure that that'll be a school focus going forward. But that's the very quick and dirty analysis.
Quick and dirty. Okay, so we've gone now to equity Aboriginality, and this is an absolute essential. The achievements of our Aboriginal students are very much written into the accountability of the principal via the Aboriginal education policy.
And James, anybody who works for public education has an absolute moral imperative that our education system has to eliminate equity disparity. So the results for Aboriginal students should match or exceed those of non-Aboriginal students. This is actually, there's a lot very pleasing in this graph. When we look at the red line represents non-Aboriginal students. The green line represents those that identify as Aboriginal students. You can see back in 2015 there was roughly 60 points difference, which is a very significant gap. Up to 2017 you can see that there was a progression up, a real closing of that disparity gap. Great result in 2018 where we punched, I don't even know which school it is. I'll take credit when it's a good result.
Take credit for it, Steve.
We did great things and got above. 2019 we've dipped down a little bit, but again we go back to the cohort, and we're talking total cohort size here of 65, and when we look at our Aboriginal students the numbers are very low. So whilst this is pleasing, we'd certainly want to be looking at it with caution.
Yeah, but I agree with you. In terms of trend, this school has done very well. Yep, sure. Okay, so, and again, there are other equity slices that you can view by as well. Scores over time. This is a secondary example, Steve, and there's two here. There's two representations of information on this page. The first one is average scaled growth.
Yep.
And the second one is at or above expected growth.
Okay, now, I believe that the most important thing that we should be measuring every single student by in every single school is growth.
And I taught you that.
Yes. You take credit anywhere you can, even if you don't deserve it. So in the top, our average scales growth is simply the amount that on average each child grew. Now, that is dependent upon starting point, and obviously if you start lower there's more room to grow, but using that, particularly going back and comparing from year to year, you can see where you're having an impact. The one that I really like is the one that's below, which is the percentage of students that got at or expected growth. Now, for everyone, just a very quick reminder, starting point, all the kids pooled on that starting point, measure, work out the average, compare it back to our base year that we've set, and then those that are above it are deemed to have exceeded expected growth. And look at spelling there, 83%.
A great result, because I'll draw your attention, Steve, to the slicer down the bottom. This is the Aboriginal students in this cohort at this school.
Which James, if you go to the top section, if we're going to close the disparity gap, we need the school results to be above state and similar school groups, and they're doing that in everything bar grammar and punctuation. When you go down and look at the percentage getting above expected growth, again, the results there are quite stunning. When you look at reading, writing, spelling, numeracy, they're well above, and that's a school that's delivering on the Aboriginal education policy and closing that disparity gap. Well done.
And so the difference between these two scores here, average scaled growth, everyone's growth from 2 years ago to this minute in time, added up and divided by the number of students. Yep. Expected growth is a little bit different. Students are grouped according to their starting score 2 years ago, and that particular pool of people, we see where that whole pool of people got to, and then divide by the number of people in that pool.
And we do one more trick. We go back to a base year that's been established to ensure consistency of comparison over years.
We're going to look at percentages in bands. So this view, you can flick between the bottom two, the middle two, and the top two bands, remembering you actually want your columns to be lower than similar schools and state in the bottom two bands. You want them to be higher in the top two bands. And again, as with all of these measures, you can slice by SES or by Aboriginality and so on. All right, the remaining view here to look at is student results. Now, if we go, I'm not going to show this one because it'll bring students' names up on the screen. But if we go back to the reading tool, we actually exported this to Excel.
Yes.
And that's, if you go back to that reading video, I think it's episode 4 where we started to talk about this. There's a great strategy there for comparing putting names to the data, we called it. Where were they 2 years ago? Where are they now? Did the top band kids stay there? Did they fall out? Did kids get extra support and make it into the top two bands? These are key questions.
Fantastic, James. Okay.
So there you have it, Steve, the looking inward phase of the K6 situational analysis tool for numeracy.
So next week, James, we've got our team of experts coming in, and they're going to guide us in the looking outward, making the judgments against research, and helping us to put ourselves in a position to start the looking forward process. All right, on that note,
It's goodbye from him.
that's goodbye from me. Bye.
See ya.